In order for you to orient, I will add some keywords: Bulgarian medics, hostages, inquisitions, Libya, Qaddafi, 3-death sentence. If 11 years ago somebody had told me that this would be my visit card, I would laugh. Because my life, the life of my husband Zdravko Georgiev, the life of 4 other Bulgarian nurses and the Palestinian doctor Ashraf, the lives of our relatives were cut into half, before and after the year 99. Everything started on February 9, 1999 in Benghazi. On this day, we, 5 Bulgarian nurses, were kidnapped brutally by the Libyan authorities. They kidnapped us from our homes and from our working places. They threw us a bus with our hands, eyes and mouth tied. We didn't know why this was happening. We didn't know how it would continue. We didn't know that we were a part of the sinister plan of a dictator. We didn't know that 8 years and a half on the Libyan prison were expecting us. We were kept for 14 months at the school for police dogs. These were 14 months of barbaric torture, humiliation and jibe. I was stretched on the sash on the window. I was beaten with sticks and cables. They forced us to stand on one foot with our hands raised for nights, and those who tried to step on the floor because of exhaustion were ruthlessly beaten. They beat our feet and then compelled us to run with this black and swollen from the torture feet. Blood and lymph were running from our feet. I was injected with narcotics. I was undressed and tied to a metal bed when the wars would start, the torment with electricity. The pain was devastating, a pain which drives you crazy. You just fall apart as a person, as personality, and turn into an animal. All you want is the end of this. You want to die, and you are ready to sign anything. The officers were having fun while I was riding convulsion. We, 5 Bulgarian women, 5 Bulgarian mothers. Dr. Ashraf experienced the same nightmare. My husband was imprisoned for 130 days in an underground cell. What followed for him was imprisonment for 700 days in a single cell with a few more people. He spent 5 years and 2 months at prison. They wanted us to self-incriminate and to erase ourselves completely. They wanted confession for a monstrous crime which not a single one of us had ever committed. They wanted us to confess that we had infected with HIV Libyan children, 420 Libyan children at the Benghazi hospital, and that we were agents of CIA and Mossad. We were interrogated without a lawyer or translator. They forced us to sign evidence in Arabic, which was language unknown to us. No Bulgarian diplomats were allowed, and even when they are allowed, it was forbidden for us to talk to them. This is what investigation and gathering of evidence is called in Libya. This way, Libya overwrote the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, International Convent of Civil and Political Rights, the Declaration on the protection of all persons from being subjected to torture and other cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment of punishment. The annex to this declaration, the Convention Against Torture and Other Cruel, Inhuman, or Degrading Treatment or Punishment, the Code of Conduct for Law Enforcement Officials. In front of the court, we renounced these violently extorted confessions. At the University Hospital in Tripoli, a forensic doctor confirmed that we were tortured. These are facts, but for the Libyan court, the facts are meaningless. The impartial Libyan court did not allow any witnesses at the defense. It totally ignored the expertise of the Professor Montagnier, Colizzi, and Perrin, and ignored the publication in the Libyan magazine La in 1998, which explicitly proves that the AIDS epidemics in Libya dates back to at least 1997. I don't know what was happened with the journalist who dared to write this truth. It ignored the expertise of the World Health Organization from 1997 and 1998 about the terrible state of the Libyan health system. Libya accused us for a horrible crime and sentenced us 3 times to death without any evidence of our guilt and in spite of all the evidence of our innocence. This is what they call justice and fairness in Libya. This sinister spectacle, this drastic provocation against the international community lasted 8.5 years. 3,097 days, the sick Libyan children, and we were scapegoats and double hostages. First, to the interests of dictator, interests which were geopolitical, internal political, and financial, and second, to the interests of some separate countries. The aims of Muammar Qaddafi were elimination of the sanctions of the United Nations and the United States, exculpation and rehabilitation of the regime in Tripoli because of the Lockerbie bombing, removal of the accusation against Libya in state terrorism, release of Megrahi, triumphant return of Libya to the international community as a democratic state which stays alert, comply with and follow the principle of international law and human rights. The turning of Libya into a factor in international politics and a major player in Africa and the Near East. Exculpation of the regime for the AIDS catastrophe in Libya, which has been raging for more than 20 years, and according to the official figures, the infected people are 100,000. Compulsion of the international community to heal the sick healthcare of Libya. Resurgence of Qaddafi's private power, which has already long ago existed the image of divanies. In order to achieve these aims, Qaddafi needed hostages and scapegoats, fabricated evidence, false witnesses, a controlled and dependent court, false confession, death sentence, and endless prolongation. A distanced international community which consisted of separate countries which either together or individually speak wonderfully about the values and human rights, about the solidarity and international law, but which forget about this the moment it starts smelling of petrol. The enchanting scent of petrol dulls the cries of the tortured. Qaddafi achieved all his goals as a reward for his crimes. While we were still perishing at the prison, the United Nations and the United States removed the embargo, and with the help of Bulgaria and Great Britain, Libya became a member of the United Nations Human Rights Committee. Today, Libya insists on occupying the chair of exactly the United Nations Human Rights Committee, and it will be no surprise if this whim of Qaddafi is fulfilled. You will ask why Qaddafi desired this. It's very simple. First, in order for Libya itself to not be investigated for crimes against human rights. Second, in order to blackmail and provoke the European Union and the whole international community with his perverse claims and medieval views. We were saved, but we were not exonerated. Freedom triumphed, but justice is lacking. Today nobody is willing to make Qaddafi responsible, but everybody wants to trade with him. I will tell you one thing. Those who reward on dictator inspire other dictators. The ones who justify the crimes of a tyrant become his accomplice and assistant in subsequent crimes. Those who serve a criminal regime because of their interests disgrace both themselves and their countries. It will be not a wonder for me if Qaddafi requests a Nobel Prize in his role of a primary defender of democracy and human rights. All that is left is for him to decide who will be the next hostages.